Môre onze voorsitter. Of praat ek met die volgende speaker? Ek is nog nie seker.
Goeiemiddag, achtbare Maree, u praat met die voorsitter. Honorable members, a warm welcome to you all. Thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon. I do note that we are quorate. It has just gone 1 o'clock, and I wish to welcome you one and all to this meeting. There are some people that still need to be muted. Perhaps if the IT people could just assist in this regard. But thank you very much. Honourable members, we've got quite a lengthy agenda for this afternoon. And I would like us to proceed without further ado. We all know the rules of engagement of the virtual meetings. And I just want to state the date and the purpose of this meeting. This is a virtual meeting of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning on Tuesday, the 26th of July, 2022. And the main items on our agenda are briefings by the department and some of its entities on the first quarter performance, with specific reference to the performance targets that proved to be problematic. I wish to welcome first our ministers. I believe that Minister Meyer has submitted an apology. Perhaps, Ms. Nikak, you could just inform us whether Minister Bradell joined us.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good afternoon. Minister Bradell is not going to join the committee this afternoon.
Good. Thank you very much then. And then a warm welcome to our CEOs of the entities. Dr. Umar, you are always welcome. And then I believe it's also the first time that we would have been joined by the newly appointed CEO of Casidra, Dr. Keith du Plessis. Dr. du Plessis, are you on the platform?
I am here. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
A warm welcome to you, and we're looking forward to a productive relationship with you, Dr. du Plessis, and congratulations. And I wish you everything of the best in your new position. Gerard Gerber is familiar to us. Gerard, thank you very much. I wonder if I could start with you. Would you like to just introduce your team, perhaps? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, honourable members. We don't have the entire team here because we only have a few minutes, but I'll just run down the list. So Anwar Ghafoor, our Director, Strategic and Operational Support, is in attendance. And then we also have our CFO, Tapelo Some, as well as Johannes Fritz, our Director, Financial Management. Tapelo, that's it as far as I have it for our department's team, and Dr. Umar can obviously introduce the Cape Nature team. Thank you, Chairperson.
Afternoon, Chairperson, honourable members. From our side, it is myself, and I am joined by our CFO, Mohammed Bayat, and also our General Manager for Strategy, Governance and Risk, Barry Barnes. We often have a little bit of issues surrounding the loading of documentation on Teams. So our secretary, my office manager and the board secretary is present just to flight the presentation as well. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Dr. Umar. And can I hand over to Dr. Sebupetsa, who will be introducing his team. Dr. Sebupetsa, we received your apology that you will have to leave us at 13:30 for an audit committee meeting as well. So I'm glad that you can be here, albeit for limited time. Over to you.
Chair, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm joined this morning by my two DDGs. That's Dr. Ilse Trautmann, who's responsible for Agriculture Research and Regulatory Services. Also DDG Mr. Jacobs, responsible for Agricultural Development and Support Services. Our Chief Financial Officer, who's here in the room with me, Mr. Flores Eisama, but also the Head of Business Planning and Strategy, Dr. Derek Trotsky. So as and when I have to leave, Dr. Trautmann will lead the team from this end. But I'm also aware that colleagues from Casidra, specifically the new Chief Executive Officer of Casidra, is also in the room, and maybe he may introduce himself and together with his team. Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Du Plessis.
Thank you, Dr. Sipupetsa. Honorable members, I am Keith Du Plessis. As mentioned, I've been newly appointed, so it's only been just under 2 months. I'm joined by my colleagues in office, by Mr. David Neft, who is the Chief Program Officer, and then I'm also accompanied by our CFO, Mr. Freek van Zyl, which is also sitting in our office in Paarl. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Du Plessis. And colleagues, I've not forgotten about you. Just for those that don't know me, my name is Andrikus van der Wester, and I'm privileged to chair this standing committee of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. And can I then hand over to our members to also introduce themselves?
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Member Sean August, member of the committee.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair. It's Derek America, member of the committee.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chair. Peter Murray, member of Agricultural Committee.
Thank you. And I did see Honourable Bosman's name on the screen.
Good afternoon, everybody. Gillian Bosman, member of the committee.
Good. Colleagues, thank you very much. Is that all the members that are going to join us this afternoon, it seems? Good. Thank you very much. Then, without further ado, I want us to proceed with the agenda. And first on the agenda is the Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, will then be followed by Cape Nature on their first quarter performance, that is for the months April, May and June of 2022. I wonder if Mr. Gerber, if your presentation can be flighted. And may I just say, Mr. Gerber, I think last time you said that you would be looking into the possibility of an external microphone for your ICT equipment. It seems to me as if it has not really made the difference yet. And if you could speak up, I think all members would appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I did get a microphone that's right here, but I have noticed that I have to fiddle with the connection. So can you hear me clearly?
We hear you clearly, although not as loud as some of the other participants.
Okay.
So if you wouldn't mind speaking up slightly, thank you. We will not think that you are shouting at us.
I will speak up. Thank you. I'll get a better microphone. All right, I'll then proceed. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you on our first quarter performance. Not to go into the detail, that's just a reminder of our 7 departmental programs. And the next slide just shows the overview in terms of, but I'll get to the summary slide. In terms of the quarter 1 performance, in which programs were there targets that had to be achieved in quarter 1. So I really want to get to this slide, which shows the summary in terms of the total. So in terms of quarter 1, there's 13 quarter 1 indicated targets, of which 1 is a demand-driven indicator, which was not applicable during quarter 1. There was no atmospheric emission license application submitted, and therefore there was nothing to respond to, not applicable. But in terms of the remaining 12, 10 were achieved, 1 partially achieved, and 1 not achieved, and I'll go into that detail now.
Chair,
Firstly-
on a point of order, the gentleman is speaking to figures that doesn't appear on the screen. It's very confusing. If you mention 12 and 13, it doesn't show there. It means nothing to us.
Honourable Marais, can I just ask, I've got on my screen a slide which says overview of first quarter performance 2022/23 continued, and in the third column it adds up to 13, and I think Mr. Gerber has just said that one of them proved to be unattainable, and that I think would leave him with the 12 that he referred to. Do you see the same screen, Honourable Marais?
Chair, I see number of annual performance indicators, then it's environmental empowerment services 4, then environmental capacity 3, communication 1, and gives a total of 14. Now, where does the 13 appear?
If you look at the bottom of the third column, Honourable, there
The
you will see.
bottom of the third column is 10 and it's 77% in
Okay.
green.
Yeah. No. The first column I count is the one where you will see the word total. The second column 51, and the third one is the 13 that Mr. Gerber referred to. Am I correct, Mr. Gerber?
Yes, that's correct. So we're only looking at, I'm speaking to the third column in terms of the number of first quarter performance indicators that had to be achieved in terms of the targets, of which in accordance with the sector indicators and our own indicators, there were 13, of which, as per the footnote, 1 is not applicable for quarter 1. And in terms of the remaining 12, 10 were achieved, and we'll go into that detail now. 1 partially achieved, and then 1 not achieved. We, of course, also sharing with the standing committee in terms of our expenditure at the end of quarter 1. Our expenditure at the end of quarter 1 is in accordance with our expenditure planning. By the end of quarter 1, just the third last column, we're standing at 26% expenditure after the first quarter of the year have passed, and has indicated that's in accordance with how we planned their expenditure. We, of course, give all the detail there in terms of the actual amounts, and of course there might be questions in that regard. The next goes into the economic classification. Again, all the detail is provided. Again, the main information we're providing to the committee that the expenditure has planned, and we're standing at 26 expenditure at the end of June, end of first quarter. To now go into the detail of our performance at the end of quarter 1 as per those indicators and the targets for quarter 1. For program 1, there was no planned target for the first quarter. The same for program 2. It's with program 3 that, and we'll go into the detail now, that for the first quarter, there were 3 planned targets, of which 2 were achieved and 1 are not achieved. And here the detail on that. So in terms of achieved, the first one, number of administrative enforcement notices issued for non-compliance with environmental legislation. The planned quarterly target was 35, and the actual output 75. And as we explained there, it's dependent on the outcome of the inspections and investigations and complaints received. And of course, in response to that, we do the enforcement actions, and we explain the result in the overachievement is because of the blitz operations that were undertaken during the first quarter, including the joint blitz operation in quarter 4, that then resulted in the administrative enforcement actions that then followed in quarter 1. In terms of the one not achieved, number of completed criminal investigations handed over to the National Prosecuting Authority for prosecution As we've reported in the past, the shortages in terms of the staff is an issue. We have just made that, concluded on that recruitment process in terms of having approved the nomination of a candidate, so that senior production environmental officer is now to be appointed. So we've missed the one that we wanted to achieve in Q1, but as that new official joins, will make up the target in the quarters to come. The second indicator, number of compliance inspections conducted, we've achieved it and we've exceeded. We again provide the explanation why it is that we have in fact exceeded the target in the first quarter. But I'll move on as per the request to focus on the ones that were not achieved. The program four planned targets for the first quarter, of which 2 were achieved and 1 partially achieved, and 1 with a performance of not applicable. So here you'll see, firstly, in terms of environmental impact assessments, percentage of completed EI applications finalized within the legislated timeframes. It's partially achieved in that we missed 1 time frame by a few days. So out of the 58 EI applications that had applicable time frames during this quarter, 1 we didn't make the time frame. The percentage of environmental impact assessment non-applications timeously responded to. This is when prior to submitting application, there's a pre-application process that's followed. We've achieved that target. So 100% of those was timeously responded to. Here's the one as indicated that was not applicable, demand-driven, sector indicator, percentage of completed atmospheric emission licenses issued within the legislated timeframes. No applications were received and therefore are not applicable for Q1. The next one, the percentage of completed waste license applications finalized within the legislated timeframes. We've achieved the target, all finalized within the legislated timeframes. Program 5 had no planned targets for the first quarter. Program 6, target for the first quarter was achieved. And here you see the number of capacity building activities conducted. 7 was planned and 7 was achieved. Program 7, 5 planned targets for the first quarter and all were achieved. And here you'll see the detail. The spatial planning and land use management capacity building, we planned 2, we achieved 4. The second one, the annual report on the status quo of the municipal spatial development frameworks, that report was completed to review the work done in the year before. The percentage of municipal land use planning applications commented on within the legislated timeframes, 100% achieved. Number of municipal support plans developed, a support plan developed for each one of the 30 municipalities during Q1. And then the annual report in terms of reviewing the regional planning implementation, that was also completed during Q1. So there you see the overall performance for Q1 has indicated across those indicators that were applicable in terms of the targets for Q1. Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Gerber. And honorable members, if it's fine with you, I'm going to allow Dr. Umar to do their presentation from Cape Nature side, and then we can pose questions afterwards to either Mr. Gerber or Dr. Umar. Dr. Umar, can we have your presentation?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Zora Parker has just flighted it. I will start, but I will just take my camera off and please go on presenting. Honorable members, we are now reporting on the first quarter of the 3rd year in the current strategic planning cycle. So what I'm going to present to you is firstly just a brief overview as to the information in our APP, then followed by the quarterly targets. So in terms of those output indicators that are applicable. So in essence, the entity is reporting on 16 output indicators for this financial year, and that is scattered through 4 programs. So if we look at program 1, there are 3 output indicators in this regard. This program deals specifically with administration and governance, and the 3 output indicators are in essence annual targets, but I'll just quickly deliberate on them. So the first one is for the entity in terms of governance, to obtain our audit opinion, our external audit opinion. And as you can see in the second column, we strive for an unqualified or audit opinion. As we all familiar with, the Auditor General concludes this at the end of July. So the audit is still in progress, but at the moment it is good, although that's an annual target. Then the number of employment opportunities, it is an annual target. We target 450. And the number of learnership opportunities that we provide is 15. So all 3 in program 1 are annually measured. And I won't go and specify against where we at, but should there be questions, I will be able to answer those. So in program 2 then, honorable members, we consider biodiversity capabilities, which in essence is the science behind the decisions that we take. In that regard, there are 4 output indicators that we look at for the year. One of them is a quarterly target, as measured on a quarterly basis, and I will say more about that as we go along. In program 3, that is what happens at our nature reserves, conservation operations, largely. There are 4 targets there. One is only measured every second year, and that is the management effectiveness tracking tool, the MET scores. We have just come out of a cycle where we measured and we evaluated that target and set a particular target in that regard. So for this new financial year under discussion, it will not be measured. It's by every second year. So the second one, number of work opportunities. This is largely through alien clearing and the removal of alien invasives. The jobs created through that, that's also an annual one. But the 2 targets that are quarterly measured is the number of compliance inspections, which I'll deliberate upon, and the number of completed criminal investigations handed over to the National Prosecution Agency, which I'll also deliberate on. So as the members can see, those highlighted in bold are the ones that we measure quarterly. The 4th program is our ecotourism and access program, largely the revenue generation aspect of our business. There are 5 particular output indicators. Only 2 of those targets are measured on a quarterly basis. So now I can go into program 2, where we will have our first quarterly target and just discuss that. So within program 2, which, just to refresh your memory, is the science behind the decisions that we take. The percentage of complete application for biodiversity permits and authorizations completed within the legislated time frame. So these time frames are legislated via particular pieces of legislation, be it the ordinance, which is partly still in effect, or other pieces of legislation. And we want to, our target is to complete 80% of all those permits and authorizations that we receive within the legislated timeframes. We have overachieved on that target. It is demand driven, but if we count all our permits and authorizations, 89, just under 90% of these were completed within the legislated timeframes. Then within program 3, which is the program, the operations, largely, here you have the largest staff component, etc. It's very decentralized out in the landscapes. There are 2 particular output indicators that we measure on a quarterly basis. The one is the number of compliance inspections conducted. We've overachieved hugely against the 10 that we set out, but there's a reason for this. There was a backlog of inspections that couldn't be performed during the pandemic and was processed, and we're just trying to clear that. Because the staff has to go out and look at the particular requirements to see if it's all in order. So lots of that backlog has been cleared, and hence the overachievement in that regard. The other one, output indicator measured on a quarterly basis, is the number of completed criminal investigations handed over to the National Prosecution Agency. We have set a quarterly target of 5. We have finalized 15. This is demand driven. So as we get it, we want to complete it, we hand it over, and that then close our cycle. Furthermore, the NPA takes over in that regard. So going over to program 4, here we have 5 output indicators, as I said initially, but 2 of them are measured on a quarterly basis. And these are the number of environmental awareness activities conducted and the number of environmental capacity building activities conducted. So the targets for the quarters 44 and 12 respectively, we have overachieved a huge percentage or number for quarter 1, because there were additional opportunities and requests by stakeholders that our teams in the landscapes and also from head office could accommodate. And we capitalized still on online presentations and then on the particular environmental days. Now, if you look at quarter 1, there were quite a few environmental days that took place, and hence the staff fared very well in that regard. And associated with it, but not completely the same, as building the capacity. And there were, we set the target of 12. And we achieved 28. And that, in a nutshell, honorable members, is the achievement from the entity for quarter 1.
Good. Thank you very much, Dr. Umar. I do believe that there's somebody that unfortunately is unmuted and struggling with background noises. Yes. Honorable members, as I indicated, it is your opportunity now to pose questions. Just indicate whether you would like to pose the question to Mr. Gerber or Dr. Umar. If there are no hands, it seems to me that all the members are happy. There is a hand. Honorable America, and then the Honorable Maran. Honorable Maran, welcome. I received a message that you were struggling to connect, but I'm glad to see that you were able to overcome those problems. So over to Honorable America, and then without further ado, Honorable Maran.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, allow me to express my appreciation for the 2 presentations. I think that both presentations speak adequately to the performance of the two departments for the first quarter. So my question is primarily directed at Dr. Umar with regard to Program 4. So there's been substantial overachievement and equally with you know, the previous programs, and that is to be welcomed. It's testimony to the fact that our staff often go beyond their normal call of duty to deliver a particular service. So my question is, Chair, is that given the overachievement in Cape Nature, in particular with regard to certain programs, were there any budgetary implications for the entity in terms of additional resources that had to be made available to satisfy the demand for additional sort of services to be rendered? Thank you, Chair.
Shall I can.
No, can I indicated Honourable Maran, would you like to go now?
Yes, thanks, Chair, and good afternoon to yourself and everyone present. I'm still struggling, Chair, to my other device to log into that meeting, but it's fine. Chair, look, yeah, just two issues to Cape Nature, Program 2 and Program 3, but also, Chair, follow suit, like the Honourable America have said, it's good to see there's overachievements. And actually it shows that the department, Cape Nature, is doing the work and they are up and running. But there's also some concerns, Chair, and I'm going to raise this one concern. But first, I just wanted to check with the doc under Program 2, percentage of complete applications for buy diversity permits, 80%. I just wanted to check if they don't have it now, it's fine. How much is 80%? Is 80% 2? Is it 3? Is it 4? I understand it's demand driving, but I just want to get a figure. How much is the 80%? That's one. The second one, Chair, is under Program 3. Number of completed criminal investigations handed over to the NPA for prosecution, Chair. And I got a problem if we regard this as an overachievement, Chair. 5 basically was the target, and it's 15, meaning there's a problem. There's more cases that's been handed over now. I would have said that if it was 1, for me it would be an overachievement, because then it makes sure that in terms of security and making sure that these type of things don't happen, there should be a decrease, not an increase. I just wanted to understand why is it more, Chair, than the 5 basically, and what basically contributed that there is 15, and not only the 5 basically that we have put up as a target. 15 is problematic, meaning that there's more criminals out there who is basically breaking the law. Yeah, thanks. Let me stop there.
Thank you, Honourable Maran. And just from myself to Mr. Gerber, if you could just give us an indication regarding the number of waste licenses. We've got a percentage of 100%, but perhaps if you could just give us an indication of the volume, I would appreciate that. Can I first give over to Dr. Umar and then for Mr. Gerber to respond?
Sure. Thank you so much for the question. I will start with Honourable America's question regarding, thanks for the appreciation. In terms of the budgetary additional budget, no, it did not. We didn't spend more. And this is because of online activities, etc., that are being conducted, and we save in that regard. So in a nutshell, no. And then in terms of the number of permits, yes, we do have an answer for the Honourable Maran. We received 879 permits, on which, and then this includes CITES permits, and 781 were verified and finalized within the legislated time frame. So that's quite a bit of permits, because if you just look at, in the past, we used to measure the number of permits, but it doesn't say much. So on average, we used to have about 5,000 permits, which is very consistent here. But now we're just taking it a step further in line with national indicators to completely process that permit within a specific particular legislated time frame. So just the last one, the number of criminal investigations handed over to the NPA for prosecution. Yes, Honourable Maran, through you, Chair, we would obviously welcome if there's a decrease in crime. This is criminal investigations, but it shows that whilst it being a demand-driven target, we finalize and we investigate very quickly to complete our aspect of the work that needs to be done, and then hand it over to the NPA for prosecution, which we find the sooner it's out and investigated, the sooner SAPS and NPA can come in and prosecute those criminals. So obviously we want that number to decrease, but it's criminal cases, activities that is happening, and we need to do something about it. And hence, those are the figures that we dealt with. I hope I've answered your questions. Thank you very much, honourable members, through you, Chair.
Thank you. And over to Mr. Gerber.
Thank you. I'm just unmuting myself. Just to say that during Q1 for the waste management licenses, there were a number of applications that were busy being processed, but no timeframes, in fact, were specifically due during that quarter. So we were busy with verification applications and new waste management license applications, but none of the timeframes were already due in Q1. So it is 100%. Those timeframes, in terms of the ones that were busy being processed in Q1, will probably come due in Q2. But as defined in the technical indicator description, all timeframes do, no timeframes were missed as defined. But yes, the numbers generally are not as high as the EIA applications. You saw there 58 EIA applications. But Chairperson, we will, in the future quarterly reporting, when there's percentage indicators, will actually provide the numbers, even if we just do it as part of the notes, so that it's clear when we're talking of percentages. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gerber. I see the Honourable Maran's hand is still raised, but I think it might have to do with the fact that he had to join us via an alternate device. And then I just quickly saw Honourable Marais' hand, and then it was lowered again. Honourable members, can we proceed to the next presentations? Thank you. I take silence as...
I was going to ask, but I just had to leave my position here for 2 or 3 minutes. So sorry if I miss my chance. I'll accept it, Chair.
Please proceed.
Okay, I would like to know, I heard there is a backlog in inspections about compliance. Why is that? And what determines the targets you set to inspect in compliance? You set certain targets. What determines these targets? Is it shortage of labor? Is it shortage of expertise within the department? What is causing this backlog? Because environmental assessments, whether they comply with it is vital, it's important when it comes to your department. So we shouldn't look lightly at it. If you say there is a backlog, it means your department is not capable or not allowed to do your job you are called to do.
Thank you, Honourable Marais. And yes, I think it's an important question because the turnaround time for this also, in my mind, plays into our economic recovery program. And because the moment somebody gets permission to proceed, obviously, there can be some economic activity. Mr. Gerber, would you like to proceed?
Thank you very much for the question, Member Maria. That's an important question. Yes, we are under-resourced, particularly we would want more resources for the environmental inspectors, the EMIs, the Green Scorpions. In terms of how the targets are achieved, in terms of our compliance, monitoring the compliance inspections, those are proactively planned based on the number of permits issued, number of licenses that we've issued that we check the compliance on. But the investigations depends on the outcomes of those inspections. It depends on the number of complaints received. And therefore, often in terms of investigations, it's demand driven. But yes, we would like to do a lot more in this space. In terms of one of the indicators is related to the level of compliance. In other words, when we do go and do an investigation of the waste management licenses, how many of those licensed facilities comply with the conditions? And we report on that as one of the indicators where we specifically report on the percentage of compliance in excess of 80%. But absolutely. So although we planned and we've again planned for the year ahead a specific number of compliance inspections, and we've also, based on the historic demand, have a target in terms of investigations and referrals. That's the interrelationship between all of those. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gerber. I see the Honourable Marais' hand is still raised.
Yes, sir. I'd like to respond to that. Chairperson, environmental issues is not only got to do with the issues which we're covering here. Recently, we had a case where land invaders occupied a very sensitive area in the metro. I forgot the name of that area now, where they even went to build houses on land not suitable. It was declared environmental sensitive area. Do you think that is compliance? And did you get involved in that dispute between the metro and these people supported by I believe the EFF and other groups that wanted these people to obtain the right to stay there? Now the municipality has given up and said, okay, they can't do anything more. That very sensitive area must now just go to the dogs. What is your department doing to get involved in disputes like that, where sensitive environmental areas are being invaded by land invaders and the whole nature of the area is destroyed? Are you getting involved, or are you acting like Pontius Pilatus, washing their hands and say, I find these people guilty, but I'm not going to interfere? Do you get involved? And how do you get involved? In putting your case to the courts and not let the courts decide on the rights of people to have adequate housing, but also the rights of people like us, environmentalists, to protect these sensitive areas. How do you get involved?
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Marais. I also recognize Honourable Marang's hand. Honorable Maran, I see that's a new hand. Mr. Gerber, if you wouldn't mind proceeding, then while the Honorable Maran is unmuting himself, he would probably be able to then pose his question. Please proceed.
Thank you. Again, important question for everybody in the country, not only for the Western Cape. We've done a lot of work. We're not the only authority in this space. Yes, we are the authority for certain of the legislation. The first responsibility falls on the relevant landowner, or in government, the authority that's in control of land. So at the national, in terms of the national land, national public works, provincial land, provincial public works, and then of course the relevant user department, for us it would be Cape Nature. So we have for years been working with the municipalities, SAPs, National Public Works, Provincial Public Works, and everybody else. The COVID lockdown directions that restrict a lot of what we were able to do. We could not do any counter spoliation. And even now that we have the court judgment, which was in the favor of the city, where the court have reconfirmed the common law of that you are able to do counter spoliation. The court's definition of counter spoliation in that judgment is extremely narrow. So we're busy studying the judgment with the rest of the colleagues in the province and in the municipalities and even the national government. But of course, the merits of each case are to be considered. So we do act jointly. Knoflokskraal is a national land, and even there, we're working with the National Department of Public Works and others, because even though that is national land, the services and other issues are municipal issues ultimately in the long term. And therefore we are working with everybody. Just to say that that we have established, as the Western Cape government, with the municipalities, a special team as part of the problem-driven iterative adaptation to try and solve this problem better collectively. And we just today received in the meeting before this one the feedback from that team, led by the Department of Local Government, because of the big role that municipalities play in this space. Because even if the municipality is not the landowner, the municipalities are often looked at in terms of access to reasonable alternative accommodation, and of course the servicing and everything else that needs to be provided. But yes, important question and a difficult matter. So we do enforce our own legislation, but often we're held up by the courts, and then we of course follow due process in terms of the court proceedings and whatever else might have to be followed in terms of the merits of each specific case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gerber. An important question, but let us just for the time being stick to the quarterly reports. Honorable Maran, I see your hand is still raised.
Yeah, Chair. Yeah, Chair, one last.
We hear you.
Can you hear me, Chair?
We hear you. Thank you.
Thanks. Can I continue?
Please do. Please do.
I just wanted to check. It's the second slide. Program 2, biodiversity capacities. I just wanted to check, Chair, the 5,000 of hectares, whether it's under the conservation estate. I just wanted to check, Chair, because we know that the department is in the process for Cape Nature, for draft stands to be decommissioned. Whether Cape Nature is part of that 5,000 hectares. If not, then it's fine. But if, how many hectares will be lost for this decommission of Cape Nature, of draft stands? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gerber. Are you able to respond?
Or I can respond, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, just through you to Honorable Maran. At the moment, the entity takes care of over 1 million hectares of land, of which drift sands counts into that figure. The reserve is being deproclaimed at the moment. So what the honourable member is referring to under program 2 is what the amount of hectares that we hope to add to the conservation estate this year, and that is 5,000 hectares and 1 stewardship site. Should drift sands be deproclaimed, obviously that 500 odd hectares will be removed from this 1 million odd that we manage, and that is done through a formalized process via the Surveyor General's office, which we do annually in any case, just to make sure for the Auditor General that our boundaries, etc., are all in place. So I hope that I've answered the question. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Dr. Umar. Thank you very much, Mr. Gerber, for the feedback. And honourable members, if you have any further questions, please put that in writing to the Minister. We'll appreciate that. We still have a long agenda. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask now of the Department of Agriculture and Casidra to proceed with their presentations. In the meantime, while they are setting up, thank you very much, Mr. Gerber and Dr. Umar, for your work. I think we need to appreciate that the legislative framework has put a lot of additional responsibilities on both the department and Cape Nature, and that the budgets have not always kept up with the additional demands. And also, it seems to me that in many cases, the environment in which your officials have to operate have become quite hostile. I've been informed of threats on the lives of some of your staff members, particularly there at drift sands. So please convey our sincerest appreciation to all the officials for the achievement of these objectives, but particularly those that you know better than us, whose work circumstances have deteriorated and who really need to stand strong and who must form a wall between us and the environmental protection. So thank you very much for that. With that, I want to give over now, I believe, Dr. Trautmann, that the head of department, Dr. Sebu Petsa, had to leave together with the CFO for the audit committee meeting. So we're in your hands, Dr. Trautmann.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chairperson and also members of the committee and also colleagues. Thank you for sharing some time with us. Our presentation will be twofold. The first part will be on the Q1 indicators and performance. That part of the presentation will be done by Dr. Dirk Trotsky. The second part of our presentation will be done by myself, and that's all about the Ashton canning factory. So without further wasting time, I would like to go into the presentation.
Thank you. Please proceed. And should Dr. Umar and Mr. Gerber and their officials want to leave the meeting, I believe it would be in order to do so now, as the next two items on the agenda both relate to the Department of Agriculture. Thank you very much. We do see the presentation on our screens. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Dr. Trotsky, will you proceed?
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members of the Standing Committee. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss. Ilse, can you please proceed to the third slide? Thank you very much. So, Chairperson and Committee, you will see that in Q1, we had 63 targets that we set for ourselves. Of those 63 targets, we achieved 58, which gives us a 92% success rate, and we are actually quite proud of our success rate. Just to break it down, in Program 1, Administration, there were 3 targets, and we achieved all 3 of those targets. Program 2, Sustainable Resource Use and Management. There were 9 targets, of which all of them were achieved. Program 3, Agricultural Producer Support and Development, had 15 targets, of which 1 was not achieved, and that is in the subprogram Producer Support Services. Program 4, Veterinary Services, there were 9 indicators, of which 8 were achieved, and I know Dr. Troutman is very proud. 8 were achieved, and only 1 in Veterinary Technical Support Services were not achieved. Then Program 5, Research and Technology Development Services, there were 9 indicators, of which 2 were not achieved. Program 6, Agricultural Economic Services, had 12 indicators, of which 1 was not achieved. And then Program 7, Agriculture Education and Training, had 1 indicator, which was achieved. And then finally, Program 8, Rural Development, had 5 indicators, of which all of them was achieved. So for the whole department, there were 5 indicators that were not partially achieved. I'm not going to go through all the indicators that were achieved. I think that would keep us busy the whole afternoon. I will only focus on that 5 as requested. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So the first target not or partially achieved were the number of black commercial farmers supported. We had a target of 4, and we actually achieved, we supported 3, with the result that we did not achieve, deviation is 1. I think it's very important to note that when we say a target were not or partially achieved, it does not mean that nothing happened. I mean, so in this particular instance, we had a success rate of 75%, which would normally be considered to be very good. The reason why we did not achieve this particular target is that to date, we still have not received the first tranche of cost payments from Dullard. And so the result is that not all planned projects could be activated in Q1. So that's the main reason why we did not achieve this particular target, and that is that we are still waiting for the cost payment. Next, Ilse, please. So the next target is in the veterinary target, and the indicator is number of Performing Animals Protection Act registration licenses issued. The target there was 40. And we achieved 35, so the deviation is 5 that were not achieved. It's important here that the reason why we did not achieve this particular target is that's a demand-driven target, and we did not receive the number of requests that we expected. Next one, Ilse, please. You can show both of these targets, please. So these are the 2 that was a number in program 5.2, and the reason for the deviation of these are both is the same. During the planning for this targets, the team went through the events that was normally would take place or normally did take place before COVID-19, and the assumption was that now that everything is returning to normal, that the same number of the same events would happen. However, to a certain extent, some of the events did not take place in Q1. It will now take place in Q2, so the expectation is that program 5.2 will catch up in these events. So the 2 indicators is number of research presentations made at peer review events. The target was 5. Only 2 were achieved, so the deviation is 3. And the second one is number of research presentations made at technology transfer events. The target was 20, the achievement 13, and the deviation 7. So I've indicated also then the reason for the deviation for these 2 indicators. Next slide, Ilse. So this is the final one, and it is the number of participants assisted with capacity building in agro-processing activity initiatives. The target was 20 and the achievement was 17, so the deviation is 3. The reason for this is that there were more than 20 people registered to participate in these initiatives. And people registered and they committed to be there, but 3 of them did not turn up. And that is why this particular target was underachieved. So that is the presentation from my side. So Dr. Trautmann, I hand back to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Trautmann. Can I just ask Dr. Trautmann, can we switch to Casidra's presentation? It seems to me as if you can quite easily, take up and take down your presentation.
I will do that. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. That will allow us then to first finish the agenda item on the first quarterly performance. And with that, I welcome Dr. Du Plessis and his team.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to keep my camera off for bandwidth, if you don't mind, Chair. Thank you again for honourable members.
That's perfect. Thank you. Can I ask that you perhaps just switch to presentation mode? So, excellent. Thank you so much. Please proceed.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, honourable members, again for allowing us this opportunity. We are looking at the Q1 non-financial performance targets, and obviously one can see here that I just want to put up a laser point here that most of the targets have been achieved. However, there are some targets that haven't been met, and we are going to focus on those rather than going on into detail on the ones that we have actually achieved. So we have 11 sub-programs that are under four programs, and the output indicators are then obviously situated underneath these various sub-programs. And obviously, the ones that we want to focus on is the ones that are that we have not achieved fully, which would be 1.1, also 3.1 and 3.2 and 4.1. But I will go into detail on those ones in the following slides. So the first target that we didn't achieve was in sub-program 1.1, corporate governance. Output indicator 1.1.1, number of budgets and EQPRS submitted as per Treasury prescripts. Here we have a target of 2 achieved, a target of 2, and we achieved only 1. But the reason for deviation was the fact that National Treasury actually shifted. Treasury actually shifted the due date for submission of the final budget for 2023-2024 from Q1 to Q4. So obviously the final budget will only be submitted in Q4, which means that this target will then be on par in Q4 again. The next target not achieved is for output indicator 2.2.1, number of CPAC or DPAC projects assisted with agricultural physical infrastructure or production inputs in the current year. This falls under sub program 2.2, farmer support and development. We achieved a target of we achieved 5 against a target of 9, as we have not received project funding for 2022-2023 yet. The department and Casidra made a call to use savings from previous year's projects to start implementing some of the projects, and we could therefore catch up some of the target that we was set. Then we also did not achieve a target of 12 set for output indicator 2.2.2, number of interventions facilitated by the unit for technical assistance. As projects are demand driven, we only achieved 11 interventions for Q1. Then a target of 500 was set for output indicator 3.1.3, number of community and household food security projects implemented from previous financial years. This is under sub-program 3.1, community and household food security. So at this stage, only 270 projects have been recognized. However, it should be noted that a larger number of projects have been achieved, but since not all receipt of assets were received on time, it could not be included in the achieved numbers for Q1, and it will therefore be included in the following reporting period. Then under sub-program 3.2, other project management services, we have not achieved anything against the target of 4 for output indicator 3.2.2. Number of projects contracted with government departments and private institutions implemented from previous years. Again, here it was important to mention that we have 9 projects that have been implemented, but that these projects are currently sitting within a retention period. Yeah, we will gladly answer some questions around that. But I'll just move on to the next one. For output indicator 3.2.4, number of farmers trained in courses facilitated, 384 people were trained against a target of 1,000. The reason here is that the database for service providers responsible for training is currently being updated. So when this database is in place, so we will then ensure that the shortfall for this quarter will be made up in the following quarters. And then lastly, with reference to output indicator 4.1.1, there was 0 achieved against a target of 10 loan agreements to be concluded and signed with beneficiaries, as we have received no funding for this program yet. So this brings me to the end of the presentation, and obviously I'm sure my colleagues will assist me in answering the questions around this. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry. Honourable members, any questions from your side?
Yes, Chairman, I have a question.
Any other hands? First Honourable Marais, then Honourable Maran. Please proceed, Honourable Marais.
Thank you, Chair. Sir, the only thing that interests me with whatever this department is doing is to what extent can they stop the outcry of coloured and black farmers not being equipped fully to become successful commercial farmers. If South Africa, like former President Mbeki, predicts, is to prevent what he says would be our own turnaround in terms of political stability in this country, we'll have to address the issue of availability of land, especially land to coloured and black farmers. So the point one is the department insists on talking of black, and I'm not black, and coloured people are not black. And Khoi and they prefer to say we are not black. We're a separate group culturally. So please, number one, tell me how many coloured farmers has been empowered and how many African blacks have been empowered. And don't group us all under black. That's point number one. Point number two, the updating service providers for training. You say that under 3.2.4, you only achieve 384 out of a target of 1,000. Number of farmers trained. That's very disappointing. I noticed that the citrus industry, for argument's sake, overseas citrus farmers working together with South African commercial farmers has empowered many black farmers in the citrus industry. Have you been doing anything about empowering coloured and black Africans in terms of citrus farming? I believe it's very successfully having been done in the citrus industry. I would like to know, what are you going to do about it? And what are you going to do about the targets which you set and projected that you haven't met? And what is the Treasury doing about it? Because if South Africa has an Achilles heel, that Achilles heel in South Africa is land. and putting people on land and getting them to the point where they don't have to rediscover the wheel. The wheel is there. Transfer of skills. Skills transfer. I'd like to hear more about that. That's the only thing that keeps me on this committee. To what extent the skills being transferred so that coloured and black farmers can also emerge as successful in farming? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Murray. Before I hand over to Honourable Moran, the Honourable Moran and myself were privileged to join at that very last minute invitation from the National Assembly. It was just emphasized to me on Friday, Saturday and Sunday that land reform is the mandate of the national government. They have the budget to purchase land and then, make that land available in terms of transformation targets, etc. But in terms of the skills transfer, etc., I'm certain we all agree that the province has got a huge role, and I trust that Dr. Trautmann and Mr. Du Plessis, particularly Dr. Du Plessis, will be preparing their response in this regard. Over to you, Honourable Moran.
Chair, thanks very much, Chair. Chair, yeah, just a couple of issues. The one is, the first one is food gardens, 3.1, target 500 achievement, 270. And I've heard now, listen to the presenter, the reasons why. I just wanted to check, Chair, because it's now said it will be reported in the next quarter. So if our target in the next quarter will be 500, does it mean then the target will be 730? Because the next quarter will have its own target and it will have its own outcomes achievements. So the 230 outstanding, it's now part of the current of this quarter that's been under discussion. I just wanted to check whether if it's 500, whether it will be 730. That's the one, Chair. Then, Chair, business development, 10 targets, 0 achievement. And the reason given is there was no funding. It's disappointing, Chair. So it means that those 10 business, I'm not sure when will they be funding and when will they receive this training, Chair, and who is responsible basically to make funding available for this training to happen. I must say it's disappointing, Chair. Then, Chair, coupled to that, project management, target is 1,000, achievement is 384, and the reason given was because we were busy updating our database. Updating our database is a reason why the 1,000 was not achieved. Again, that's the point. How is it that we can put such an excuse forward that we were busy with updating our database? How long did it take to update the database? A day, a week, a month, a year? It's really disappointing, Chair. Thanks. Let me stop there.
Thanks so much. And in the absence of any further hands, can I hand over to Dr. Trautmann and Dr. Du Plessis?
Good afternoon again, Chairperson. Thank you so much. With your permission, I want Dr. Dirk Trotsky to give some comments on the questions. Then I would like to proceed to Mr. Darryl Jacobs for some comments from the department side, and then over to Dr. Du Plessis for comments on the specific targets that were mentioned. Is that in order?
Perfect, thank you.
Dr. Trotsky?
Chairperson, thank you very much. Yes, I think only one of the questions referred to the department, and that is to what extent can the department support farmers? And then also in terms of farmers that are black or colored. I can just say that we were requested to provide a report on our indicators and the achievement of indicators, and we've prepared the presentation as such. But what is important that we should note is that we as a department are not allowed to spend any money on purchasing of land for transformation purposes. We did get a legal opinion on this, and the instruction that we got is very clearly that is our equitable share. If we spend part of that on land purchase for transformation, then it will be considered wasteful expenditure. So that is important. And as part of the indicators, we actually, the majority of farmers that we support are, if I may use the term, is colored, but it is under the black, generic black category. So if so requested by the standing committee, we can actually give a further breakdown in terms of the number of colored farmers that we do support. I just want to come back to the statement that the farmers that we support are not successful. In 2008, in 2013, we did an external evaluation of the success rate of the farmers we support. We supported about just over 460 farmers at that stage. Of those farmers, if we measure it against 39 different criteria spanning the whole triple bottom line, then 62% of those farmers were actually successful or highly successful. We did a follow-up study in 2018. Again, there was about 400 farmers in the intervening period that we supported. We used the same 39 criteria, and we found that 72% of the farmers were either successful or highly successful. And I must mention that in our planning for the end of this strategic period, we plan a third follow-up study on this to determine whether we are still reaching our objectives. So that's just on the question by Honourable Member Marais. I think the other questions, as well as those put by Member Maran, actually refers to Casidra. So with that, I am going to hand over to DDG Jacobs. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, Chairperson and members. I wasn't here at the start to introduce myself, but thank you for the questions. As Dr. Trotsky has said, a few of them do relate to Casidra, but there are definitely some which is relevant to my branch.
Baby, give me a kissy too.
That's very cute.
Honourable Marais, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So with regards to the African versus coloured farmers, I mean, they're all within the generic terminology of black, and we can certainly give that breakdown of what the different race, gender, disability, all of the different categories in terms of support that we provide. We do have that information, and we can certainly provide that outside of this meeting. I think Dr. Trotsky has confirmed that the majority of the farmers we do support are certainly classified coloured. But we will more than gladly provide that information. In terms of the citrus farming area, I think the member would be pleased to know that on the 8th of April of this year, we signed a memorandum of understanding for 3 years with the Citrus Growers Association, and that was really just to entrench the partnership that we do have with CGA and in support of expanding and growing the citrus farming sector. In terms of the point around our skills being transferred, we do have a target which we met in terms of first quarter, one of those, and but we have a target around mentorship because we recognize that mentorship is critical to transfer of skills. So for the year, we've got a target of 35. It's certainly one of those targets that we are meeting. And then the question around what we're doing about land, Dr. Trusky has responded adequately to that, Chairperson. So I think in terms of the points that have been raised, that are for the department, and I think we have adequately covered that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Baie dankie, meneer Jacobs. Can I give an opportunity then to Dr. Du Plessis?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'll maybe touch on one or two things, and then I'll also ask my Chief Program Officer, Mr. David Neff, to come in. Obviously, we hear the disappointment, and obviously from our side, we will obviously make sure that we rectify things as soon as possible and as best possible. On the whole issue around the training of farmers and the linking to the citrus farmers, as Casidra ourselves, we will obviously through the department ensure that we also engage the citrus industry and look at maybe lessons learned and the ways in which we can also try and work together to roll out some of our training that we have planned for the year. And then also around the food gardens, the 270, that is correct, Honorable Maran, the number will just add up. So for the following quarter, we are supposed to then have 730 interventions, and that is then also the whole idea. We will see whether we can catch up. David, if I can hand over to you through you, Chair, to David Neff.
Thank you, Mr. Neff.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just on the additional 2 points then, in terms of the 384 in comparison to the 1,000 target set for farmer training. So the database updating is a collaboration between Casidra and the college at Elsenburg. And so that process is on the way. And so as soon as that is concluded, we will start with the training implementation. But that's something that's in process, and we are awaiting feedback there. And then in terms of the business development, the reference to the 10 loans that couldn't be given. So the funding is received, Honorable Marang. We received the funding from DDAT, Department of Economic Development and Tourism in the province. And we just had a meeting with them last week, and we are shortlisted for possible funding so that we can address this target. So we trust that if the funding through DDAT happens, we can actually reach this target in the coming quarters. Thank you, Chair.
Good. Thank you, honourable members. In the absence of any further hands, I want to say thank you very much to both the department and Casidra for taking us through the quarterly reports. And Dr. Trautmann, that brings us to the next item on the agenda, and I trust that our colleagues from Casidra might also want to stay online, and that is the news regarding the Ashton Canning factory, the different interventions that there were, the options, the risks. If you would be so kind just to share with us where do we stand in terms of that. And I do know that the Honourable Marais was also quite concerned regarding the potential job losses, etc. Over to you, Dr. Trautmann.
Thank you, Chairperson. I just want to make sure if you can see the presentation again.
Indeed, and if you might consider changing to presentation mode, just done. Thank you. Perfect.
Chairperson and committee members, thank you so much. There's been a lot of media hype and discussions around this matter, which is of serious concern to the department and its stakeholders. In the presentation, I would like to take you through the status and then also the current situation and then also the planning for the future. So as you can see, this newspaper clip was taken from an announcement about 2 weeks ago that Tiger Brands decided to keep the operation open for another year. So I'm not going to read through it, but I want to highlight some specific points to you. And the presentation was done quite extensively or in detail to give you a full picture, even if you want to look at it later on or read through it. So the Ashton Food Factory, we call it L&AF, is a division of Tiger Brands. It's the largest fruit canning facility in South Africa. And it is the second one is Rhodes Fruit or Food. So this one is the biggest one in South Africa. Already in 2020, Tiger Brands indicated the intent to exit the fruit business. And it was because they were of the opinion that the company and the outputs and also the financial figures was not really strategically aligned with their objectives. But most important was that in the 3 years of 2019-2021, the factory did not perform well. The 1 year it was drought and 2 years of COVID, where exports could not happen or to a limited extent, and also the fact that the market overseas for canned products and especially canned fruit was not as good as it was in the past, and also competition from other markets. Tiger Brands at that point then was looking for a new buyer. They contracted ABSA to follow a process to find a buyer, and according to them, they had initially 32 interested parties, but at the end, the producer group, consisting of the producer supplying the product to the factory, was the only party left around the table because of their vested interest in the fruit, the community, job creation, and also economic development. So this process was then ended as the interested parties, in this case the producer group, could not secure the funding. Tiger Brands is willing to sell the factory for R1, but the value of the assets is 900 million. And all the export brands are included in this arrangement, and it brings in 80% of income. So that is the background where the negotiations stopped. Now, if we just go back to the financial, production losses, employment and social impact, it is something to be very, very concerned about. We're talking about 2,000 hectares of canning peach, apricot, pear orchards. We're looking at 2,000 to 2,500 permanent workers on the farms working in the orchards. If you add to that the 250 permanent and 4,000 seasonal job opportunities in the factory, you will clearly see that closing down this factory will first of all leave the 280 farms in the area around Ashton, as well as its farmers, as well as its permanent and seasonal job workers or seasonal workers, in absolute dire straits. And also the social dilemma. I mean, these workers, whether they are permanent or seasonal, they also support bigger families. Closing the factory will have a disastrous effect on the social and economic well-being, and we as a province do not want to shed jobs. In actual fact, we want to create more jobs. And also because of our drive for agri-processing in the Western Cape, we cannot lose this factory or its international market share, and so forth. So Tiger Brands came to the Western Cape government and also asked for support. We did some homework on the background, as I explained to you. And also the producers came to government to say, how can you support us in finding an amicable financial solution? The farmers want to go into a co-op situation. They want to take over the business. They want to put together a consortium and keep the region going, keep the job creation going, and keeping the business flowing as was being done in the past. The third point is very crucial. The most important aspect is to find a new financial partner in the coming weeks. Now, take into consideration that it has been announced that Tiger Brands will keep the factory open for a year. However, one should not think that you have a year to get your ducks in a row. Minister Meyer clearly indicated also to the farmers and when they met him, as well as to the Canning Fruit Producers Association, that there is no year left. It is maximum 6 months to get this financial proposal on the table, get it funded, so the transition could be a very seamless one. Now, it leaves the producer group in a very bad position, because they could only in the previous round raise 60 million. Now, after we had several meetings between Tiger Brands, the Canning Fruit Producers Association, and also the other ministers, the Premier, and also Westgrow, and we also had the deciduous fruit industry around the table, Hortfin, which is the financial arm of the Hortgrow, the deciduous fruit body, indicated their appetite for considering the application, but it was subject to meeting specific requirements. And the requirements were the following: that it should be 51% black ownership, which meant 49% for the farmers and 51% black ownership. That the company or the business should be positioned in the value chain of palm, stone, table, and wine grapes, and so forth and so forth. When Tiger Brands heard that Hortgrow's got an appetite for this project, a partial appetite, let me call it like that, because they're not able to come to the table with all the capital required, and they heard about the 51% black ownership, they offered to give another 150 million. They will put it down, and that 150 million was meant for the severance packages of the staff if they would have closed the factory. Now, after all the deliberations, the following emanated: that there should be a new company, let's call it a new co, with 2 shareholders, the cooperative, the farmers, with a 49% share, and then your BEE company to have a 51%. It then meets both the criteria of Hortfin and Tiger Brands, and the new company will then have equity funding to the tune of 210, which is the 60 million the farmers could put down on the table, plus the 150 million of Tiger Brands for the, let's call it the 51% black ownership gift that they're putting down on the table. Then the group was requested to apply to Hortfin for 200 million. It's a medium-term facility that they should pay back within 5 to 8 years. And then Hortfin will also help them to apply to a commercial bank or another investor to get 300 million to the table to to make up the full amount that Tiger Brands require to hand over this business to the new company. Now, the support from the department, we are in, let's call it, active observing status, if I can call it like that. The HOD has appointed myself to lead the discussions in terms of engagement with the parties concerned. And for example, last Friday, we had a meeting with the Canning Fruit Producers Association, with Hortgrow and also Westgrow, to get updated on what's on the table at the moment and the way forward. The department is also committed to support the Canning Fruit Producers Association with funding. That includes the development of a business plan, etc. The department will continue to support Westgrow and the association to find financial partners, and the process of due diligence is driven via APSA, as nominated by Tiger Brands. Now, I can just mention that last Friday, Tiger Brands was then to look at all the possible options who came in, but we have not stopped the process of finding investors. Tiger Brands is just going to do, let's call it, stock taking of possible investors around the table. We hope the financial process can be completed within 6 months. And Minister Meyer also wrote to the National Minister, Toko Disa, to ask for assistance through the new Agriculture and Agri-Processing Master Plan, or the AAMP, or the Agri-Park program. So in a nutshell, Chairperson, I will jump to the last slide, just going back to the presentation done by Dr. Dirk, and that is our overall performance is 92% in Q1. There is a process in place to address the areas where underperformance was recorded. We have continuous engagement with our national counterparts regarding our conditional grants in terms of the work that Didi Jacobs and his team is doing, but also Casidra, but also support the Canning Fruit Producers Association through the plan at national and the Agri-Parks process. As we said, we will provide our utmost support with the acquisition of the factory to preserve jobs and stimulate economic growth in that area. And we will also continue to engage our partners with the commodity approach to provide support to our new farmers. And that links to the question that both members Maran and members Marais posed. So, Chairperson, thank you so much for the opportunity, and we would welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Troutman, to you and your colleagues, and particularly for all the engagements and hard work regarding the Ashton Canning factory. I've already seen a response from the Honourable Marais. Are there any other members that then also Honourable America and Honourable Maran? Can we go in that order? Marais, America, Maran.
Thank you so much. That was very informative. Thank you very much to the presenter. One question. Was it ever considered to register this as on a JSE as a selling shares to the general public to make up this money? Whatever you need. Can the 49% be, or the 51%, instead of saying it must be black, can we say that 51% should be open to the public to buy shares in it, like happened when we had the casinos introduced in South Africa? And I know they needed millions, Mr. Adams and Swatch, they needed quite a bit of penny to open up casinos at Grand West. They started a listed company, everybody could buy shares. I bought shares as well. Has that been considered? If not, why not?
Chairperson, you want me to answer?
No, can I ask if you wouldn't mind just jotting down the questions? Then over to Honourable America.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I think it is very informative in the sense that provide a necessary background and provide a degree of optimism that at the end of the day, something tangible will come out of it. So, Chair, my question is with regard to the 50% BEE component of a proposed new co. Now, is there any, at this stage, any clarity as to how that 50% would be consisting of? Who's going to determine, who from part and qualified to be classified as a BE component, or is it once again going to be a vehicle for the connected few to muscle in a potential lucrative financial arrangement over time? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Honourable Maran, and then just a question from myself.
Thanks, thanks, Chair. Let me first say welcome to the presentation, and I must say it's put together very, very well. It's easy to understand. Chair, I wrote to you when the news broke about Tiger Brands wants to close this factory. And I asked you for this committee to have an urgent discussion about these particular matters. And in a standing committee meeting, the previous last one, where this thing was, I'm not sure how to describe it, how it was discussed. This committee basically arrives at this decision that there is no need to discuss it and let the Department Economic Development and Tourism deal with that. Because I've explained in my email to you that this thing does not impact only on the factory itself, which falls under finance and economic activities, but also 300 farmers basically that will not have an offset point to basically, and meaning that the thousands of farm workers will lose their jobs. But I'm glad that we have the opportunity to deal with this particular method now. Chair, it was said that the MEC wrote to the minister. I just wanted to check whether the minister have responded, and if, what was his answer? If not, fine. Refers at the later stage, what was the response if it's not now? Then, Chair, the new code, 49% the cooperatives, which is the farmers, and then black owned 1%. In that 51%, and if we don't have the answer now, it's fine, we can get it at the later stage. Whether there's a worker component in that 51%. Chair, I would like to understand that because, Chair, to assist this program, workers have took a decision by saying, look, we will not put more pressure on this factory or on the owners or whoever runs it by not going to demand for increases in this current year that we are in. They're not going to put pressure. They will accept whatever they are earning now. And Chair, it's a bold step by workers and those who represent workers by making that decision. So we would like to understand whether there will be a. I read, Chair, there's this thing of 1,900,000 rand Rand is willing to sell the factory for R1, the total value of the assets. Now, I like to understand, Chair, the factory does it not include the assets? For our Tiger Brand selling, we are willing to sell the business for R1, and then the asset is something else that will be R900. Because when I read factory, I then thought that the assets in that factory, everything, it's part of the factory. Whether the business will be sold for R1 and then the assets for 900,000 Rand. And lastly, Chair, it's now been said it's not actually a year, and I will agree. What will happen then, say 6 months or 7 months, if the funds have not been raised? What will happen? Will the factory, I see that 195 million has been set aside for severance packages to lay off workers if the factory will have to close. What will happen after 6, 7 months if the funds have not been raised? Will they ultimately close, or what will happen? Because it's scary just to understand that the number of workers, 250 permanent and 4,500 seasonal, that's now the factory, the plant itself. And then the 2,000 to 2,500 farm workers, it can even be more. It's scary to just having this thing in mind that the factory might be closed and how it will impact on the whole Langeberg, Robertson, your Aston, and your Montague as a whole. Chair, thanks.
Good, thank you. And then just from my side, and I'm grateful for the question that Honourable Maran has asked regarding the assets and how much of the purchase price would be in terms of brand, land, machinery, etc. If I could just ask, it's my observation that many farmers in the area around Robertson and Ashton are switching to citrus production, and so does that also impact on the long-term prospects of this factory? The second one is, what is the market doing in terms of canned fruit in general? Is it a growing market? Is it a diminishing market? What are the trends that we do see in that market? And then lastly, Department, surely you must have had some of your economists also looking at this. Do you see that with the right climatic conditions and good management, etc., that the prospects of this factory can be turned around in the short term? Over to you, Dr. Trautmann, and your colleagues.
Chairperson, thank you so much. I will try and answer all the questions in the order that they were posed. Honourable Member Marais, I am not sure, and we will have to find out and revert back to you, whether Tiger Brands did consider the JSE option of public shares. I've got no idea about that, I must be honest. So I will be able to get that information for you. But it was never on the table in any of the negotiations of the last 2 years. Member America, yes, the 51% BEE, it was clearly stated by Hortfin as one of their criteria that this is not going to be a scheme where some elected few people will be able to benefit. It will be for the workers to benefit. And it is clear that before Tiger Brands, and they made it also very clear, before Tiger Brands will consider, let's call it the handover of the factory to the new co, they have very strict terms of taking over the factory, and that would include the workers and their involvement as well. It cannot be not worker involvement, and it was on the table also Friday when we spoke about it. Then, Honourable Moran, thank you so much. We do have several ministers of the Western Cape government around the table. The big drivers would be the Premier Windy, Minister Meyer, and also Minister Rengler from Economic Development. It's a concerted effort from all the departments plus Westgrow to take this forward. Minister Tokuda Disa received a letter about 2-3 weeks ago. As far as I know, she has not responded as yet. Minister Meyer is at the moment not at the office. He's returning tomorrow. So hopefully we'll be able to give you information if there was a positive response from her side. The NewCo, as you mentioned, will have a worker component. And as I said, it was also the basis for the negotiations and the basis for the 150 million that Tiger Brands is willing to put on the table that was meant for the severance packages of the staff, that it will then go to the NewCo, but with very strict rules and regulations in terms of the workers. Yes, the R1 is for the business, but the NewCo must find 900 million operational funds. Tiger Brands do not want asset stripping, and they're very, very adamant. They do not want the investor that will buy the business and sell it immediately. That's not what they want. They want this business to continue. I think what is very important also to mention is that going back to my slideshow, the company has not, the Ashton company has not made any good profit the last 3 years due to the drought and COVID and exports. It's only this year that the prospects are really good for making a profit. So the way forward would be more positive in terms of making a profit. My colleague Dertroskis just also indicated to me that the factory should be profitable to register on the JSE, and that might be the reason why it was not considered in the past, Mr. Marais, for putting it onto the JSE. Your question about what happens if there is no buyer, we are very positive. From the Canning Fruit Producers Association, they had numerous inquiries from investors. Hortfin is still a very, very good possibility, and they're willing to bring a bank on board as well. So we're very positive that the solution will be found within 6 months, and to phase out Tiger Brands and to phase in the new company. I must also just mention that Tiger Brands has indicated that about 20% of the factory's produce they will still buy. So the factory will still producing products for Tiger Brands to export. So they are very sure about having Tiger Brands as one of their clients. One of the concerns that Tiger Brands did mention in our discussions right at the beginning with Premier was, and it links to Honourable Van der Westhuizen's question about citrus, they did mention that some of the orchards that the farmers do produce from, they're growing old, and the farmers are not replacing those orchards, but they are planting other crops, and that's exactly what you've said. But I think if the new company is lean and mean and does its good business planning, they can work around that what is being produced, and that they can also put through the canning factory and also export. I think what's very important is right in the beginning of the discussion with Tiger Brands, it was clear that they made it also very clear to us is that the market for canned fruit in particular has declined, and we've got competition on the international market. However, I was in that meeting. I said, but I think there's also a need, and I hope that will come out in the business plan. There's a need to also repurpose the factory to some extent, produce new products, new healthy lifestyle products, but also to look at products that's less sugar intensive. At that point in time, colleague Trotsky also mentioned that one should also look at exploring the African market, because a tinned product, fruit, is high value. It doesn't need refrigeration, and it can be stacked and stored for a long time. So the market situation, as Tiger Brands explained, it was merely based on the exports to beyond African borders. However, we think there should be a look at African borders, and also then a repurpose. And the prospects of the factory would be very good if they have the finances, but also have a deep look at how they can make the company really profitable. And as I said, it is this year, it seems that the farmers will get for the first time a very positive outcome from the factory. And that concludes my response, Chairperson. More than welcome to ask more questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I must say, overall, a very positive picture that you are painting. I recognize the hand of Honourable Marais.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you so much for painting a picture that makes economic sense to me. If there is a decline in the demand of canned fruit, especially because it's sugar intensive, like you say, and that we might have to look to Africa and not beyond Africa, that could be part of the solution, because European countries are now very health conscious, and especially in terms of sugar. But I also want to say there's another thing government nationally should have looked at, and that is, what is the profits after tax? Not before tax. I think there's big turnover. It's not profitable, these companies, because our tax stands at over 40%. And I'd like to know if the Treasury should perhaps consider making presentations. It would be easy for government to reschedule the tax tables to say food production, because food is at the center of all our problems in this country: unemployment and food security. And it would be easy if government considered lowering the tax on companies involved in the food industry. It's just my penny in the pool, because that would make it much more profitable, the canning, etc., and it will paint a totally different picture. I would just like to see the comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Marais.
Thank you. Would you like to comment, Dr. Trautmann or Dr. Trotsky?
Nothing from my side, but maybe Dr. Trotsky would like to comment.
The Chairperson, no, I've got nothing to add at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think there are a few elephants still in this room with the factory, or in the factory. One of them also, I believe, the costs associated with the unreliable supply of electricity, etc. We do know that agro-processing requires an uninterrupted electricity supply. And I think there are just numerous cases. The Honourable Marais has referred to taxes that might push up expenses, although taxes normally impact more once you start making profit. But for me, there are all the other costs that our poor entrepreneurs need to carry. that I think we should address to make South African industries more internationally competitive. But thank you very much for that briefing. I must say you've given us hope, and we will be following this. And we wish the department everything of the best in your endeavours to try and preserve and hopefully even grow jobs in the agricultural sector in that area. And with that, I want to say thank you very much for not only the briefing today, but particularly the work that you've done. And I trust that you are also looking at, a worst case scenario of how are you as the officials from the Department of Agriculture going to support our producers should it happen that canning factory be found unsalvageable. So thank you very much, Dr. Troutman. Any last words from your side?
Chairperson, thank you so much. And yes, thank you for your support. I think the efforts from the entire Western Cape government to protect this factory is really energetic. We're doing our best. We support where we can. And we are really positive that we will find a solution. But thank you for your time and energy also behind the scenes to support us in this way. Thank you so much.
Good, thank you very much. The committee is now going to proceed to the next items on the agenda, which are all, if I can call it, committee business, approval of minutes, tracking documents, etc. So officials, if you want to return to your desks and continue with your daily tasks, you are free to do so. If you would like to stay online, obviously this is a public meeting, and we always appreciate people showing an interest also on the business side of Parliament. But to all of you, Dr. du Plessis, you and your team, Dr. Troutman, please convey our appreciation also to Dr. Sebu Petsa. Thank you very much for being with us today, and best of luck with your second quarterly performance targets. We are looking forward to see that report in a few weeks' time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, members.
Good afternoon, members. Bye-bye.
Thanks and goodbye.
Good. Thank you very much, members. The next item, 5.1, can we please flight the minutes of the 23rd of June? There will be an opportunity for resolutions and actions stemming from the presentations that we've heard later on in the meeting. But if Ms. Niekerk would be so kind just to first flight the minutes of the 23rd. I see it's up there. Thank you, Ms. Niekerk. If you wouldn't mind just scrolling through that document. Good. Page 1, page 2, and page 3 have been presented to you, honourable members. Can I please get your comments on whether we can adopt this set of minutes? I see a hand from the Honourable Maran.
Thanks, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I don't have a problem, Chair, with proposing that we adopt the minutes. If you look, for instance, at 2, you remember what happened in that meeting. I'm satisfied that my stance be captured within the minutes reserved is view for expression in the House. The issue, Chair, of getting a interpretation in terms of standing order 19, I believe that's still outstanding. So at a later stage, when we have received that interpretation, that it been made available to us as a committee. But for now, Chair, I'm happy as the minute reads. I have read through it, and I'm happy to propose that we accept.
Thank you for your support, Honourable Maran. Any other dissenting views? Not so. So thank you.
Chair,
Honourable Marais.
I think that some of the questions which I asked wasn't answered that day when they showed us how they make this, what do you call it? That machine, they showed us that contraption. And I said, you are rediscovering the wheel. It's already been discovered overseas. And you just went there and copying it here. And I wanted to know if this was not a waste of money, if it's already been developed, the wheel, about how to make tea from bulk. And I also said that this is not an infinite source of material, the wood. It's not infinite. And you have a lot of expenditure in building these machines, that what they are busy with. But when there's no more wood pulp from which to make tea, I mean, what are we going to do with the machinery? I don't know if this is captured. It didn't have time to check the minutes. I only received it this morning.
Yes. Thank you, Honourable Marais. I think you may already be on the next agenda point.
Yeah, I wanted to check the Honourable.
Yes. Okay.
There is already in the car now.
Thank you.
What is it?
Can I just ask? I think this is just on the minutes of the previous meeting of the 23rd of June. And it seems to me everybody is happy for us to adopt those minutes.
Okay.
With the proposal being made by the Honourable Maran. So thank you very much. That is then adopted. Which brings us to the next report, Ms. Niekerk, and that is the report on the oversight visit to the Southern Cape. Quite a number of members joined us on that visit on the 14th and the 15th of June. It was the week just before Parliament closed. And again, want to express my appreciation to those of you that did come with us and for your positive comments. But we are now considering the accuracy of the report of that oversight visit. Maran?
Chair, just a point of clarity. You can call it like that. Chair, just for record purposes, because I'm not sure whether the Honourable Marais have seconded or whether you have seconded for the minutes we have seconded. I haven't heard that part, Chair. And
I
if not,
second.
Chair,
I second.
Oh, you second. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Honourable Maran. Just while we normally try to ask for a proposer and a seconder, the interesting thing is that the rules of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament do not require such minutes to be, seconded, as long as the members are happy, and the decision is made, then the minutes are adopted. Okay, which brings us now to this report that you see on your screens. Again, as I've said, thank you very much to the members that joined us on that visit. And the feedback that I received afterwards was really extremely positive. And I think we can again thank Ms. Niekerk for fantastic arrangements. But what is in front of us now is the report and the accuracy of the report. So, Ms. Niekerk, if you wouldn't mind just scrolling through the various pages, I think the members were able to see whether their names have been captured. Was in the first day, yes. Good. Honourable members, are there any can I first ask, any problems with the minutes? Would anybody propose that, not minutes, the report, would anybody support a proposal that we adopt this report?
I come back to that. It seems too supportive of whatever they have been doing. I'm just asking, are we talking about the resolution, the processes wood mill, timber 2 processes wood mill? Is that where they made the tea? That
No.
they showed us how they're going to extract a tea from the wood, from the pulp.
Honorable Marais, my recollection is that Timber 2 was the factory that used those enormous blue gum logs for the sleepers for the British Underground Railway system.
Yes. Sorry, then I'm confused now. Okay.
Good. And I think the one that you are referring to was the one where they extract the vinegar, what they call wood vinegar, from biomass.
Yes. Where is that? Is that Cummingston?
That is the company called New Carbon. You see it there on the screen. And you say we are perhaps too positive in our recommendation?
Yeah, we were so impressed with what they say they're doing. But and I asked the question, I said, you don't have a regular source to feed your machines. We're going to spend millions on to make those machines. You've got some logs there that we can utilize to extract the vinegar from. But if there's no more logs, what you going to do with the machinery? Seems such a waste of time, because we already discovered that overseas they've already perfected models like this, but we do not have a regular source of wood to feed these machines. I thought it was just scientists and liking experiments. If there's one thing engineers like, it's experimenting. Doesn't mean it's going to be economically profitable. And
Honorable Marais, I think if you look there at the report, there are two paragraphs, I think just above that sentence in bold, or the heading in bold. I think we did express some reservations, which will probably address your reservations as well. It was unclear whether the project could be replicated and if there were any interested investors. And then the committee requested, and then you will see there at the bottom, a response on whether the pod system in terms of the project could be replicated and whether the concept could be sold to investors to create similar plants. So I think we did express some reservations as to the sustainability of this.
Then I'm satisfied, sir.
Excellent.
I'm satisfied.
Excellent.
And I want to ask the chair to excuse me. I have something urgent to attend to. If the chair will excuse me, please. I stayed till as long as I could, but I unfortunately have to ask you to excuse me.
Your presence is always appreciated. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon and for staying as long as you did, Honourable Marais. You are excused.
Thank you.
And honourable members, it seems to me there's only the one hand in support currently, that of Honourable Maran. If there are any dissenting views, please, now is your opportunity to just raise them. Otherwise, I will take it as concurrence. Thank you. It seems to me the report is then adopted with the support of the meeting, which brings us to the next item, and that is the quarterly report, our own quarterly report for the months of April to June. Honourable members, I can assure you that I've been able to go through these reports, and I want to commend Ms. Niekerk again for the absolute quality of these reports. It's quite a lengthy document with all the columns. I trust, honourable members, it has been, perhaps you can just stop there. The report has been circulated to all members. Members, there you can see your attendance, We've had some change in membership during that quarter. Good. Thank you very much, Ms. Niekerk. You can take us down to the bottom of the report. Honourable members, can we adopt that report as well? The tracking document? Sorry, the quarterly report first. Ms. Niekerk, do you want to add a name? Or can you just minute that the committee adopted the quarterly report?
I will just add it as such, Chairperson, that the report has been adopted, considered and adopted.
And I do note the hands of Honourable Miranda and America. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then the next one is our tracking document as at today's date.
Chairperson, this is very, very small, but it has been circulated to members.
Good, thank you very much. Yeah, it is a bit small to see. Ms. Niekerk, perhaps can I just make a recommendation, and perhaps it might be of benefit to others as well. On the top right of the page, you will see there's an up arrow or an upwards pointing arrow right at the top of your screen. And if you click on that, it normally removes the options, or the can I call it the menu? Do you see it right there at the top? Collapse the ribbon. That's it. Then normally your page can already be slightly bigger, and then obviously there's also on the right hand side a margin which you might be able to remove, or we can zoom in with view. Okay, honourable members, but it has been circulated. It's a lengthy document, 12 pages. Again, unless there's anybody that want to raise any concerns, I'm going to put it to the meeting that we adopt this tracking document as well as a true reflection of our work and any outstanding work that there may still be. All in agreement?
Yes. Chair.
Good, thank you very much for that. And then, Ms. Niekerk, it seems to me we can again then go on to our program as of today's date, just to give us an indication of what is waiting on us. Honourable members, we now need to submit a business plan, which also gives an indication to the management of Parliament regarding our proposed expenses, activities, etc. Expenses related to advertising, oversight visits, etc. And this document has also been circulated. Perhaps Ms. Niekerk, if you wouldn't mind just scrolling through that so that members can just get a feel for that as well. Here are all the pieces of legislation. Some of them cover activities that we've already undertaken, such as the expenses related to the Southern Cape visit. Good. Now, members, while Ms. Niekerk is scrolling through that and your eye is just glancing over it, I've also received a request that we visit one or more of the mines on the West Coast. There is a lobby group, Protect the West Coast, that is quite concerned about the potential environmental damage caused by the mining activities right on the coastline of the West Coast. There are a number of mines, the most well-known probably known as Tronox. There's another one that goes under the name of Mineral Resources that are mining the dunes next to the sea, and they are extracting precious minerals from the sand. And we, there seems to be a bit of a passing of the buck in terms of who's responsible for what. While the department and Cape Nature has got opportunity to comment on some of these mining applications. And while, for example, Matsikama local government puts down the conditions, there is concern about the oversight or the whether there's enough, can I call it follow-up, in terms of whether the mines do adhere to their agreed to or conditions of rehabilitating those areas where mining has already taken place. Now, Ms. Niekerk has indicated that our program for the remainder of this year is quite full and that it might be problematic to find a suitable date. And since Vrendal or those mines might be about 5 hours drive from Cape Town, but she did include that in our program. Ms. Niekerk, would you like to expand on that?
Chairperson, yes, in the business plan and committee program, it has been included in August. But I've since had a look at the parliamentary program and I have forwarded a few options to you. And the proposal is to maybe schedule this visit during the first week in September. But the only way I see it happening now is perhaps if yourself as the chairperson of this committee maybe requests another committee slot and then give it back to them so that we're able to undertake this visit. The parliamentary program is also not mentioned that there is a public speaking training program coming up for members soon, which also might have an impact on when committees can actually undertake these oversight visits. But I think between the two of us, we could maybe just have a chat and then come up with a possible solution and see how we can work it into our program. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Ms. Niekerk. Members, there you have it. And while we're also considering our plan going forward, there some of you may be aware of our application for a study visit, and particularly the possibility of following up the intergovernmental agreement with the state of California in the USA. Now, I have received feedback from the Speaker's office that the administration and the Speaker's office is in support of our intended study visit, but that it will have to stand over to the next financial year. So you will not see that study visit and its costs in this plan that we currently have in front of us. But the feedback has been positive, and it seems to be a matter of time for us to embark on that visit. I recognize Honourable Maran's hand.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I don't have a problem with including these programs or oversight visits, basically, on our program. But Chair, these visits, Chair, and also the portfolio committee visits that we had over the weekend, it comes very expensive to us as members because we had to claim from our enabling allowance. I have also already indicated, because I was not aware of this particular request, that we should visit basically the West Coast. We were there, it's quite far. I've already indicated that I will join the oversight visit of human settlements from the, we are leaving on the 31st, we are coming back on the 3rd. Chair, these visits is very expensive. I will be able, because the oversight visit of human settlements will not cost us a cent because they're going to pick me up in the Durax. But others where you will have to drive with your own transport, it's very expensive unless the transport can come and pick me up. It's also far to drive, for me to drive from home to Cape Town to get WCPP transport, Chair. I have to reconsider whether I will attend some of these or whether I will not. But as I said, I don't have a problem basically supporting these to be part of our program and for a budget to be supported accordingly. Thanks.
Good. No, thank you, Honourable Maran, and you will appreciate that your challenges are also shared by many of the other members. The reason why we include some of this on the program is particularly that once we've approved of this, then obviously these requests for funding will be forwarded or will then be taken up into the bigger budget for the committee section of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. And I believe that there is tomorrow afternoon a meeting of the chairpersons of committees in order to address some of these challenges, particularly with the rising cost of living, etc. Good, honourable members, there you've got the projected expenditure, you've got our intended program. Again, I want to take that the committee agrees to this and that we will allow Ms. Niekerk to see where she can find the necessary slots for us to fit in all of our intended activities in this in the months going forward. Again, Ms. Niekerk, are you happy or would you like to link a name to the approval of this?
That note's fine as is, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you.
Provided the committee is in agreement, then I'm happy.
I do recognise the hands of Honourable Maran and America. Thank you.
Great, Chair. Thanks.
Good. Honourable members, that brings us then to resolutions or actions flowing from today's meeting. If I can just, alert you, it was the briefing on the first quarter performance indicators from the Department of Environmental Affairs, Agriculture, the entities Cape Nature and Casidra, and then also the briefing on the possible closing of the Ashton Canning Company. Any resolutions, if I may be so bold to say, shall we express our appreciation for the briefings, but then also particularly for the work done to try and ensure the future of the Ashton Canning factory. Honourable Maran, I see your hand.
No, Chair, that is a legacy end, but I am supporting, Chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Any further resolutions, honourable members? None. Thank you. Then it brings us to the last item on the agenda, and that is general. Any comments under general that honourable members would like to make? Honourable member, thank you very much. This has been quite a full agenda. I appreciate the participation and attendance of each and every one of you. Thank you very much for the way in which you've posed the questions. If you've taken part in the meeting, I'm really grateful, and I wish you everything of the best. I didn't when we started this meeting recognize the valuable work of our supporting staff, be it from ICT, Mr. Eso, Mr. Mfundu, Mshumpela, but particularly that of Ms. Niekerk, who is really so diligent and is really serving us with the most fantastic standard of service. Honourable Maran and myself took part in the oversight visit this last weekend from the National Assembly committees, two committees. And, some of the farms that we visited only learned of our visit last week and Thursday, as we were also only informed of those oversight visits last Thursday. So I appreciate that the majority of our members couldn't accompany us. I've got great appreciation for the Honourable Maran, who went backwards to be at some of these events. If I can give you some feedback, there are really serious problems on a number of our farms with particularly the living conditions of some of our farm workers, but I think it would have been less, the problems would have been, or the challenge would have been less if it was not for the large number of people who, due to the lack of suitable housing in South Africa, because I think it's not only limited to the Western Cape, make use of accommodation on farms. And, you know, many of our farmers are required to provide clean drinking water. They are required to assist with refuse removal. And in many cases, you know, also to provide electricity to people without income, in many cases to people that have retired, that are on pension age or at pension age. It's really been very informative again to visit a number of those farms and to be confronted with the challenges of overcrowding and so on many of these farms. And I don't know if the Honourable Moran would like to add something to that, but I don't think we can ignore that. I need to bring this under the committee's attention. Honourable Moran, would you like to add?
Chair, no, you have basically said it all. Fine.
But what I actually wanted to say is, honourable members, if I compare the arrangements for this last weekend's visits to the arrangements that we experienced, for example, in the Southern Cape, where we even had the contact numbers, the names of the hosts, the coordinates of where we would be meeting people, etc. It really made me proud of the Western Cape Legislature, and particularly Ms. Niekerk. We longed for your presence over this weekend, and I'm just concerned that the National Assembly might snap you up. Honourable members, thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's been a long meeting. Honourable Moran.
Yeah, just on that one, Chair, I also want to express appreciation for our procedure officer to make sure our arrangements is in place for such a short notice, Chair. Yeah, I really want to thank Serene for making sure that even the places where we have stayed were decent. Where I've slept over in Van Ryn's, it's decent place. The food was nice. Thanks very much.
Correct, and as you've said, it was also at the very last minute, and we know that supply chain management processes normally take a lot of time. So thank you very much. And honourable members, with that, too much talk. I want to say thank you very much. Have a great evening, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at our next meeting. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Chair. Same to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Nomfundo.
Sure, Shireen. See you tomorrow.
Thanks, Chair. Bye,
Are
Serene.
you going to the
Bye
office
bye.
tomorrow?
I'm in office tomorrow, yes.
Okay, I'll see you.